All right, we're live. Welcome everyone to Table Talk, where we talk all things tabletop. I'm your host, the Battle Gamer, with my co-host Glue Boy.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking about a very interesting subject. I want to break down what stats, what numbers on your character sheet actually matter. It's going to be an interesting one. But while we're waiting for people to hop into chat here, why don't we just go ahead and have a little bit of small talk? So, hey, Alex, what have you been up to?
Yeah, well, a big reason why we haven't done streams for a bit. I've been in Ireland for a hot minute. I was there for basically 2 weeks. Sick as hell. A lot of castles, a lot of cool ancient sites that I went to. A lot of drinking. I did so many whiskey tours. And I have 2 things of whiskey I brought home with me that are significantly cheaper if you buy in Dublin than if you buy it in the US. I found out, it's just current events basically, but America is now not the biggest importer of Irish whiskey, it's Canada. Because apparently Canada, ever since the tariff stuff happened, Canada made a big move of, alright, well, no more American alcohol. We're just going to get rid of all of it. Yeah. And then they just made up for that stock by being like, let's just buy a bunch of Irish whiskey.
It's almost like the tariffs were really, really bad for Americans' imports and exports.
Yeah, it's almost like it was a horrible idea. Said by every economist. But yeah, it's Ireland is very cool. It is the type of place I love traveling. I love doing that. Every time I travel, I always put myself in the position of would I live here? Probably not. Only because I'm not a big fan of big cities. And I like the American conveniences. I like being able to drive 5 minutes to a Safeway kind of thing. But man, is it such a cool vacation country, because Ireland is just very cool. The people are cool. Everything about it is very fun. But so far, the only place I'd live is Victoria, Canada. It's the only other out of the US place, and it's because it's very Pacific Northwest, just with good city design. Because it's a big city that's designed by intelligent people, so it's walkable and nice.
Yeah, that's probably the right answer. My thought was Norway, but
I just haven't been. That's why.
Norway's real nice, and it's very Pacific Northwest because it's got roughly the same kinds of climate. The only difference is when it snows a lot. So it's like the Pacific Northwest most or a good portion of the year, but then the snow comes and it's way tons of snow and a lot harder to navigate, and there's some issues.
Yeah,
but
that makes sense. I'll say that too. Ireland's climate I love because it's very Pacific Northwest. It didn't go above 50 degrees when we were there. It was gloomy all the time. The only exception was Galway, where that, because it's right on the water, it has the most insane weather ever. Dublin was just kind of gloomy and lightly rainy all the time, which I love.
Right.
I adore the Seattle haze. But then Galway would be you're walking around and you're like, okay, it's sunny. Oh, it's suddenly really cloudy. Oh, we're getting hit by hail. And then you step inside for cover somewhere, and then 5 minutes later it's sunny again. It's very tropical weather, if anyone's been in that kind of experience, because the rain in very tropical climates is you see rain clouds coming, and then it pelts for 10 minutes, and then it's fine. It's like it got it out of its system. And that's what Galway is kind of like. Galway is just very hectic weather, but everywhere else is pretty cool. Belfast is very fun. It has some... We did learn a lot. One of the things we learned about the Irish history of independence and the Troubles. We had a very excited Uber driver in Belfast, an Irish guy. Immediately, he's like, do you guys mind if I just take you a longer route to your place so I can show you awesome stuff? And we're like, yeah, man. He's like, this is my first job of the day. Might as well extend this. And so he showed us the most bombed hotel in history, which is a fun little mark that Belfast has.
Yeah.
He was showing us some buildings, and there's one that has a comically tall fence, and he said it's because Back in the day, that was just a police station, like police military base. People would kept lobbing shit over like grenades, and then eventually someone got access to an RPG and just started shooting the building. So to stop it, they just put a fence in front of it. That's like just comically tall wire fence that you like have in your backyard. A lot of shit like that, but it does sound like, based on just talking to a lot of people who live there, if we see Irish independence in the next 10 years, I would not be surprised. Like, the consensus is, because literally the consensus is, if it's ever more than like a 50-50 split, then that's when they have to actually do a real vote. And apparently the ratio has been shifting more and more into Irish favor. And specifically Catholic, because it always, if you go down to the politics of it, is less like British and Irish. It's more, are you Catholic or are you Protestant?
Yeah.
There's an old joke that was like, in the time of the Troubles, like you'd be trying to go to Belfast, and then you get stopped by two like IDA soldiers, and they'd knock on your window and they'd be like, "Are you Protestant or Catholic?" And you'd respond, "Atheist." They'd look at each other and go, "Are you a Protestant atheist or a Catholic atheist?" That's more of the vibe.
Right. Yeah.
But Ireland's so sick. I'm happy my dad and I, we were originally planning on going to Scotland, like partway through and like splitting in half, until we realized how annoying of a process that would be. And I'm really happy we instead just stayed in Ireland the whole time.
Yeah. I've done the let's go to Norway, and then when you're in Norway, you're like, all right, let's go to a new place every other day, and it's just a lot of work, a lot of effort. And you don't get to really see the places that you stay at for too long.
Yeah, exactly.
I would love a week in Bergen or Oslo, though I've kind of seen a lot of Oslo at this point, so Bergen would definitely be the place that I would go and like stay like a week or more.
That I'll say too, if anyone is like planning a trip to Ireland, straight up, I would say, if you don't want to go anything too crazy, just a week in Dublin, there is enough to do that you will be like thoroughly entertained for a week. All you have to do is avoid Temple Bar at all costs, because there's a lot of pride in serving drinks and serving Guinness at the proper Guinness price. I think it's like €4. Temple Bar charges like $6.50 because it's the tourist spot. It is the place you like. They will directly rip you off if they know you're a tourist, and so there a lot of like Irish folk will tell you to avoid Temple Bar. Just go anywhere next to it and you're fine.
As for me, most of what I've been doing the last month or so, one, playing Legend in the Mists, which I'm sure a lot of people know by now. I've been playing a lot of Legend in the Mist. And two, just like, it's just now getting warm. It's now just getting nice out. We're going outside. I'm taking my daughter on walks and going to the beach and stuff like that. We live in such a good place for taking young children places. And just living life. Also, playing the shit out of video games. I played a good chunk of Crimson Desert. Actually, how many hours do I have in Crimson Desert? A lot. And then I stopped Crimson Desert because that's a game that's going to consume my life forever. So if I want to do anything else, I got to just do it. Yeah, I played 65 hours of Crimson Desert, which doesn't sound like a lot to a normal gamer, but it's a lot to a dad.
I mean, I've played 68 hours, and like, I've decided to take a break because I was running through stuff too fast. I don't know how far you are in the story. I got to a part where I'm not allowed to play Cliff for a little bit, and I was like, I
haven't got that far yet, but yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know how long it is, but it's after your big assaults on some stuff. But like, I've decided to take a little break. I decided, with the great news, maybe, hopefully, of the Assassin's Creed 4 remake, I was like, you know what? I want to play through Black Flag again. And God, you know, I hate this term. I deeply do not like the discourse around like using this term. Assassin's Creed is such like slop video game.
Yeah.
in the way of this is so easy to consume, and like this isn't objectively good. It's just entertaining.
Video game junk food, yeah.
Yeah, like I don't like the idea because I think it waters down a lot of things, is overused constantly, and eventually a lot of terms like that just become I don't want to think about like what I'm talking about. Let me use a weird jargon term.
Sure.
But like that's what Assassin's Creed is, and I feel like we all get one. I feel like it's healthy, even like as I would call myself a connoisseur of games, maybe because I enjoy the art form thoroughly. But like I get the one. My one is Assassin's Creed. It does a lot of things really fun. It appeals to me. And then more and more I play Black Flag and I'm like, yeah, this kind of is just like the good one. Because it's just super well written and then occasionally remembers it's an Assassin's Creed game.
I also recently beat Monster Hunter Stories 3, which really good game. Best Monster Hunter Stories game so far. I haven't played the other ones, but that's what everyone says. And also, honestly, it's one of my favorite Monster Hunter games at all, but that's not like a super big barrier because my favorite Monster Hunters so far to date is still Monster Hunter World. I like Wilds, but World did some things that they just haven't done since, like actually tracking the monster down. I miss that a lot.
I think the tracking mechanics in World, having gone back and tried to play like Ultimate, because more and more I'm just comfortable in the fact that the older titles like before World aren't for me. I like having combos and stuff. I don't like how limited all the weapons feel in older games.
Yeah.
But like the tracking in that is just there's the two ways of doing it. You either luck into it or you do an emote towards the airship.
Yeah.
And then it like points you in the right direction. And then you have to paint pod, and like it's just more annoying because the loading screens just make it annoying. But the actual tracking is an element of Monster Hunter World as fun. I kind of wish, if anything, Wilds, what it did is in the story missions, you had to actually track down like that want of theirs of making a living environment that you're playing in.
Yeah.
And then if you're farming, it can maybe direct point you to where they are.
Maybe.
Because like I'm a big fan of if I'm farming something over and over again, I want less slowdown. But I think if you want to make something intentional, giving you a nice one-off intentional like slowdown to like really soak something in, I think is cool.
Yeah, well, so how it works in World and why I think it does so well is because in World you have to hunt down the monster, which is fun. But once you've hunted a monster enough times, you know where they tend to be because monsters have certain locales that they hit frequently. So even if you want like farming in World was not super tedious because all you had to do is just be like, okay, I'm hunting this monster, I know where it tends to be. It's like they have 1 in 3 areas that they spawn in typically. So you just do that and it's pretty good. I wish Wilds had that. I also miss the it's not invading monster, but the
oh yeah, when the monster butts in on your hunt.
Yeah, I forget what it's called.
Yeah, same.
I missed that a lot. They have not they had that a little bit in Rise Sunbreak, but monsters joining your fight was a good thing because you could monster ride and do a lot of damage when 2 monsters in the same area.
It happens like at least once every hunt in Rise, and like maybe twice. They'll like literally beeline to another monster like across the map to kick its ass.
Yeah, but in World it was actually a problem. It was actually kind of scary. Like, yeah, the monsters could fight each other and there were turf wars, so it was good. But sometimes the monsters would just be in the same area and they would also just start fighting you, you know, and it became a very chaotic endeavor. So that was really, really fun. I really miss those mechanics and I miss them and I wish they'd bring them back, even though, objectively speaking, I think Wilds is the best World's combat has ever felt. So, you know.
Yeah, it's there's some people talking about it on Twitter that I saw that it's why I think Monster Hunter is such an interesting series. Well, largely for me, on like a selfish way, because I've tried so many times. I had a very good buddy of mine who loved Monster Hunter. He literally like mailed me Monster Hunter 4 for the 3DS. Like he liked it that much. And I played it, and I'm like, I can't stand this, man. Like I hate how this controls. I hate how like clunky a lot of this stuff is. I don't like games that either have really low combo routes or don't feel responsive in any way. And like when I was playing it, it felt less like intentional slowdown. Now I think it is. It is very intentional what they're trying to do. Now that I can look at a lot of it. In Monster Hunter Wilds, one of the criticisms I've heard, and I do agree with, but I like don't care, is kind of my takeaway, is the changing your direction on the fly is kind of like a little lamer. Since like you have that focus mode and you can like literally mid combo alter how you're swinging. And
yeah,
like,
I don't know.
I look at that. See, the thing is like I look at that and I'm like, okay, yeah, objectively, I understand this point. I think you are removing something from the game. As in, like, my other favorite Monster Hunter game is Rise. I love Rise.
Yeah.
And like the intentionality of Rise is really fun. But I also look at Wilds and I'm like, yeah, but the focus mode is like so sick though. Like I have so much fun with that. Like that's the thing that drew me into Monster Hunter and is still a part of Wilds that I'm like, this gameplay is super sick. I to the point where like my takeaway is if they make another game, either maybe it's like another Monster Hunter game in the style of like Rise, trying to harp on a lot more of the older like content for Monster Hunter, or keeping going in this like specific direction with Wilds and World, I would both be happy and disappointed if they removed this system or like kept it, because there'd be that part of me that's still like, fuck yeah, it's the gameplay I like, but also, yeah, like the intentionality of like the boss fight game
right
is a strength of it. It's a weird conflicted opinion to be in, like I'll fully admit.
I don't know. After playing a bunch of Wilds, I would say I like the aiming because it adds almost like an extra level of complexity to the combat.
It's like another thing to track.
And I don't think it diminishes the intentional style that Monster Hunter, or at least like World style combat is, because there's still like action commitment. There's not a bunch of skills that can cancel super easy. And if you want to get your big hits, you do need to fully commit to a lot of attacks. And so just that ability to kind of shift a little bit, just all it does to me is it just removes those situations where you miss a monster by a hair or like just by being slightly off, which doesn't feel good.
Oh so. Yeah, 100%. That was a big friction point I had, because like now I actually, because my first Monster Hunter game, besides from that 4 on the DS, was World. I played half of World, and like I didn't fully get it. I was really bad. Hunts took me forever. I was like insect glaive player without using the kinsects as a mechanic at all.
Right.
And then eventually I switched to dual blades and I just kind of spammed buttons. But like, I was trying to play it like it wasn't Monster Hunter. It was the big answer.
Right. Yeah. That's a big problem. A lot of people.
Yeah, that's like a big issue. Like I was trying to approach it like an action game.
Yeah.
And then I was playing it, and a big problem I'd have is it felt like consistently you get one attack in, and then like you can't do anything else.
Yeah.
You get a hit once. Now playing it, I'm like, that's kind of the point in some parts. Like it's knowing when you can attack, and it's learning the monster and how to fight it.
Or creating opportunities to get to hit it more, like using traps. Not to trap, but to actually like stun the monster temporarily, or status weapons are really good for applying that. In fact, a Wild's meta is using a weapon that has like paralysis on it, and like dual blades is a really good one for status effects, or even charge blade, I think. And
I know dual blade's been really good with that.
And then when the monster gets stunned, then you swap to like greatsword, or you swap to one of the bigger, like more consistent heavy hitter ones, and then you do your bonking, and then you stay on that weapon for a while. I think there's because monsters gain resistance to status effects, but I think it falls off after some time. I'm not sure. I can't remember the method, but usually it's just like, if you're a greatsword user, you actually play dual Dagger? No. Sword? Dual blade.
Dual blades.
I don't know why I forgot that suddenly. Dual blade first, stun the monster, then go into great sword, use the opportunity, and go from there.
I don't know
So
why I've never considered running, because all I've done is I usually would run like 2 different elemental or 2 different like status affinities
yeah,
for the same weapon type. But that's because like all my builds are built for like, this is my hammer build, this is my charge axe or my switch axe build. But running like 2 different weapons, I gotta say, it's pretty neat.
yeah,
The other thing I'm gonna like give Wilds is even going back and playing Rise and adoring Rise, Wilds has my favorite version of so many weapons.
yeah.
Largely because like I like the switch axe. I found the way to appreciate it in Rise. But like more I played, I'm like, I don't really like longsword that much in Rise. Because I thought for a bit I was gonna be a longsword main because I was like, I want the counter. But I learned how really to play a switch axe, so switch axe is my boy. But more and more and more, I'm like, no, I'm a sword and shield guy. I'm full sword and shield.
Rise has my favorite sword and shield combat at all. It's so good.
It is. I still think Wilds I enjoy more because I feel like I have more toys to play with for my combo routes. But it has my favorite like, what are they? The insect moves.
Wirebug.
I love the wirebug moves for it. I love the uppercut counter so much.
Yeah.
It feels so sick, and like that entirely makes the weapon for me. And like, other than the fact that Sword and Shield does so much, that like, finally my main issue I keep having with Monster Hunter of just, man, I want to play your game, but I'm sorry, like pressing 2 buttons, and that's it. I don't find that fun. And then Sword and Shield's like, hey, check this out. You have a tool for every situation.
Yeah.
Perfect, finally.
Yep, I played a bludgeon build where I just used the shield moves that, like, either the charge one or the uppercut one to just bonk the monster in the face and stun it. That was really good.
Yeah. Like, the only bit other with Wilds is the only reason I say my point that I read about and have my conflicted feelings on when it comes to the focus mode is I have not lost that many hunts in Wilds. Even like the high difficulty ones. The only ones I've lost, like, other than like there's like the random bit every once in a while or like with multiplayer shenanigans, is the Final Fantasy one. Because that one is just really hard, and the slaying Nursilla part, like partway through, was just really annoying. Like incredibly annoying. But Wilds I just find really like way easier because there's just a lot of different tools that the game is giving you.
There's a lot of much harder hunts now. I don't think you've done many of the 10 stars.
I think I've done a handful. I did like the
unless you've played in the last 2 months.
Okay, probably not then. Because it's less of like, oh man, this monster's doing a lot of damage, or like they're really aggressive. It's just, I think the tools you have access to in Wilds are just really nice. And so because of that, I love Wilds combat. Like I really love it. But man, your bird is so nice to help you get out of dodge. I get a hard knockback, I'm getting a free heal off of that. Like that it's that kind of thing. And in Wilds Rise I had less of that, even though the Palamute does also kind of give you that sometimes.
Kind of, not to the same level, but yeah.
Yeah, that one is a lot more because they will literally scoop you off the ground after a hard knockdown.
Yeah.
But like that is the only bit where it is just easier to back away in Wilds. And it's another bit. I'm not even saying it as a negative. It's just the notice. I'm like, I'm struggling in Rise where I'm like, man, I'm like, what hunter level am I? I'm doing a 6-star mission. And like, this is hard as fuck. Not even a build thing. It's just like I have to learn the monster, and like I just got unlucky with a hit. And then in Wilds, I would first try a lot of things like pretty easily.
Yeah.
And like the struggle points a lot of the times were oh, I just fucked up and took the wrong armor. Like I have a -15 weakness to your element. I just was stupid. Or like I'm in a party of 4 and someone just jumped in and died 3 times in a row.
Yeah. No, yeah, the Wilds, I mean, to be fair, World kind of had the same thing, where they're really not hard until they get Master Rank unlocked, but the 10-star hunts, They're pretty rough. Most of them are like the guardians for each of the areas, the apexes, and they'll like one shot you pretty easy. So it makes it a bit harder for sure. But all right, as much as I'd love to talk more about Monster Hunter because I love the series, we're about 26 minutes in. So we should talk about stats. And so when I'm talking about stats, I'm not necessarily specifically referring to attributes, even though I know that's what a lot of people associate with stats. I'm talking about any numbers at all, or like what your skill proficiencies are, you know, HP, all those kind of stuff. Because I want to break down, I want to have a chat and just see like what do people think, and I guess mostly us, what do we think is necessary in a TTRPG to even have a stat for? Because I'm going to be super real right now. I don't think I like attributes as a thing in TTRPGs. And the reason for this is attributes, building towards attributes, usually there's a lot of emphasis on this in TTRPGs. Like, you want your stats to be as high as possible, right? And thus your build is going to innately have good stats, bad stats, or good attributes, bad attributes. And it completely tells you how you're going to build your character after that. Because if you're a fighter in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, you're taking strength or dex, which means you're either going to be acrobatics or not acrobatics, athletics or acrobatics or stealth is like your core skill that you're using outside of combat. And then maybe medicine, maybe some dex related thing. There's not like con based skills really in the game. So
that endlessly disappoints me. Games, by the way, like here's a fun. It's, I mean, maybe a little off topic slightly. There's a cool game. It's called Esoteric Ebb. It is essentially someone using like a Disco Elysium style. Foley wears that inspiration on its sleeve, but the intention was to harness the vibe of like a tabletop game. Like, he wanted to channel the vibe of when he GMs D&D for his friends. So it's Disco Elysium, but it's 5th edition D&D, without some of the pain points. And finally, that game adds some actual legitimacy to having con as like a key skill. It is con in that game is very interesting, very fun. Also, for some reason, con is the thing you want to go if you want to play a political centrist. But it is very cool because that game actually made con interesting instead of, haha, your health is higher, which is the most boring answer to like what you're gonna do with con.
Yeah. And honestly, a reason why I don't like con, especially for a lot of this, because it's one of the most inert stats that you can have, because all it does is give you health, usually, or make your fortitude saves higher in Pathfinder, which is important.
Yeah, I like the idea of having my resistance number is cool. I just wish it did other things.
Yeah, so like core attributes I find are more of a limiter in TTRPGs than they benefit things, right? Because when you want to play interesting styles of characters, right? Like in Pathfinder, you almost have to, you don't have to, right? Yeah, you could invest in skills that don't have attribute modifiers, but you are just not getting the most out of them. And with how Pathfinder does its skill checks, even though yes, I'm aware that there is technically, you don't have to do DC by level. A lot of people do. Many of the rule books do, or the adventure paths do. So, you know, just a fact of how the game is designed. But it just affects, like, if you want to be a muscle wizard, right, who is just like, you just want to play a super jacked wizard just for fun. You're actually a wizard, but you want to just have like a high athletics or something because you think that's fun, right? It's insanely hard to do in the most efficient way because you need to have high intelligence and you want good con because you don't want to die as a wizard because you have one of the least health modifiers per level of any other class, so every point of con really helps. And so being a muscle wizard is really hard to do unless you're willing to give up your intelligence. But like, why do I have to give up the main thing I want to do just to be a muscle wizard?
Like the only bit I'll give with Pathfinder is that like inexperience is the character I keep bringing up whenever we talk about playing against type. I have a very fun fighter wizard, like wizard pretending to be a fighter. It takes some doing, and like regardless, you are going to be a worse fighter because you're playing this.
Yep.
You have different tools. It is, I am giving up the raw like good stats of fighter and the good feats of fighter by having more options at my like disposal instead of having like a couple things I do really well. That feels like that's often the decision you get put in like some tabletop games if they're made good. Is you can do this thing. If you want to go all in, here's the route to do that. If you want to do a halvesy, you're gonna do this. It's not as strong. Like it's the same thing of like I get actually when people talk about Ranger, when they're like, oh, Ranger is just a bad fighter. It's like, yeah, but Rangers just have some other things they can do. 5e Ranger, base 5e Ranger did just have a lot of issues.
Yeah.
But like you're playing a Ranger because you don't want to be a fighter. Because it does hit a different vibe with like your tools and your kit that you're available. But if you're wanting to play seriously against type, because in 5e you're going to be really pulling teeth if you want to play maybe a pure strength based like Ranger.
Yeah.
It really forces you to go dex.
And the thing is, right, skills pretty much just do, like, outside of combat, right, skills do pretty much what stats do, right? You want to play a smart character, it doesn't matter if you have a high intelligence as much as how high your skill proficiencies are in intelligence-based skills. Because in these systems, very typically, your highest modifiers come outside of the attributes. The attributes just kind of stack on top of it, you know? So it's like, if I want to play a smart character, technically just having high skill proficiency in those skills is the thing that matters most. But if I want to be really good in, like, as far as the system is concerned, I need to have intelligence on top of that. But the intelligence isn't playing the bigger part in that equation. And that's for any TTRPG, because stats are not your biggest, like, statistical pull for how good you are at things. And it's the same thing for athletics. Like, technically, if you want to play a strong character, what matters more than having a high strength is having a good athletics, because that's the skill that lets you do the thing. So, and there's also lots of people out there who are just like, yeah, charisma is a dump stat because it's the only not combat relevant attribute, you know, if you're not going intimidation route or whatever in Pathfinder. So it's just like, why do we have stats that are mostly used and considered for combat in a TTRPG game where you do other things other than just combat? Like, we're talking board games, I'm all for it because that's the whole point of it. It's a game. But a TTRPG, combat is just one of the pillars of the experience.
I think, because my takeaway for a lot of this is, like, having the decision to have stats and however you're going to manage the, I'm giving you a way to express, like, what a character is good at, be it numbers or, like, a different methodology. It's playing into, like, all right, so that's opting me into certain gameplay of this. And I think if we're having a game that's very, very combat heavy, because as much as, like, Pathfinder is great in a lot of regards, it is, if you walk away from it and, like, from just reading through all of its stuff, it is like a combat sim. Yeah. It is a very good, well-orchestrated combat sim with different elements for exploration and roleplay on the side. The exploration is a little high, is like in the middle ground, and then the social stuff you actually get is pretty light. Like, of the 3 tiers you have. So, like, in that regard, I enjoy having very statty numbery because it's fun to do that in a combat heavy RPG. If you try to roll up to me and are like, hey, what's up? This game, very non-combat, actually very roleplay and very social. and then you're hitting me with the exact same stat line, I think you're making a weaker gameplay decision for your game. Because the other example I'm thinking of is like, all right, what are other methods that aren't just raw numbers? The one I think of is how World of Darkness handles it, where you have like an attribute, but the number attribute is usually are you rank 1 to 5, and instead of giving you like just a bunch of numbers you're balancing with, it just accumulates a dice pool.
Yeah, and to be fair, in
show
World of
who's better at
Darkness, attributes play half of your stat pool rather than like a third, like they do in other TTRPGs.
Yeah, because in every single situation, you're going to be rolling an attribute. So I don't think the only check you make that doesn't actually like have two like both a stat and an attribute that you're rolling is like you're rousing your hunger, which is a single blood dice.
Yeah, and that's not stat related necessarily.
No. Like it's essentially a secondary health bar, similar to like humanity and such. It's like a different resource in health resource basically. In that regard, because I think that fits World of Darkness better. Because I think if World of Darkness had like the typical D20 system and attribute system, it would be worse. Like, God, I enjoy how the dice pool stuff works in that game because it better represents a lot of like wider skill expression in the way of your character has different skills they're good at.
Yeah.
And has an expertise system. And always love a good expertise system. But that's a system. It's just the more I'm thinking about it, I'm running through like the list of games that like, is this game lean more combat or lean more like social and roleplay? The more roleplay centric games really shy away from hard numbers. I think for the better.
It depends because like Call of Cthulhu is a D100 system, D100 roll under system.
Yeah.
And so it's all numbers there, you know.
So that one is me not having played it because whenever I've heard a story of Call of Cthulhu, I keep hearing stories of people like fighting an eldritch monster with a shotgun. Is it a losing battle? Yeah, but I'm always hearing stories of the fights.
Yeah, I mean, Call of Cthulhu is much more on the narrative-driven side because it's not a game, it's not built like a dungeon crawler, and I think that's kind of like an important distinction here. Because for me, I don't equate the idea of TTRPGs with dungeon crawlers.
Yeah, same.
Because my best experiences in all of tabletops are the interesting stories told where, you know, it's not necessarily the combat. Sure, the combats play interesting parts. They're notable things. But if I look back at my most memorable gaming experiences, I would say, you know, maybe a third of those are combat, which, funny enough, 3 pillars, right? But most of the other ones are just like funny moments, interesting moments, or things where the characters did something interesting to influence the story. And that's usually done through either like ingenious use of abilities or through like role playing and talking to people and trying to have things happen, you know.
Yeah, it's like a big part of it because I think if you're taking away from a tabletop experience, like looking back on your memories of it, and combat doesn't make up some of it, you gotta uphold the 3 pillars. You gotta have multiple moments, because I have moments that are reminiscent of each 3 pillars. Like there are some combats and such that I remember, a lot of which were from like the Rosencrantz crossover arc. Like some of the combats in that were insane and really fun. Same with just a lot of the anima fights. I just enjoy. That's just because I enjoy anima gameplay, to be completely honest. But like the way I figure it, because I view it in a similar vein of I don't view a tabletop game as as like the classic concept of what a tabletop game is. A lot of the ways I view it. And it's the nice thing about these streams and us chatting, especially about Legend of the Mist, it's been making me really sit down and analyze how do I engage with like tabletop games as a medium. And more, I realize I engage with it in the same way I do like a video game. Right. As in like I play it because I'm looking directly to have the experience of playing said game. And then when I'm in it, I can then assess like, all right, what are the strengths and positives, the what are the negatives of this? What do I think that if I'm running the game, how would I alter some of this? What inspiration can I take from other games and how they do it? But like, because it's the same way of in my top 10 list of tabletop games, and if I'm asked like, hey, do we want to do an Anima Beyond Fantasy, a Legend in the Mist, a Pathfinder 2e, do we want to do a Fantasy Flight Star Wars, but we pretend it's not Star Wars and make it a good sci-fi series?
I mean, that's a Genesis, but yeah.
Yeah. Still, Star Wars is the one I've played. Which one would I have? That'd be a really tough answer. It'd be a really tough call for me. Because I love all those games for different reasons. And, I think all of them do what they're doing incredibly well. And the way of like, you know what? I'm craving some Pathfinder. I'm craving that like RPG. I want that like fantasy RPG experience. I want something a bit more like high energy. I want to do some anime bullshit. Let's play Anima. I want to make a character that is really unique, that I couldn't do in a lot of other situations, and like has it feels very justified and legitimate in the zone. Legend of the Mist. It's very much like based on that for me, which is also what's fun about these kind of conversations, because I think it points at the intentionality of some game design of looking at a thing, being like, I don't like that this is a D20 system, but like, could this have done something different? Is there a route? How did they play into having their number system, or how did they kind of fumble it? Because I think if I were going to take the idea of a D20 with all these stat systems, I prefer how Pathfinder does it. I think 5e kind of fucked its math.
Yeah,
its math is
I agree.
Not good. And I think Pathfinder 2e is the best expression of said math, but it has all the shortcomings of said math, because it's still annoying.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the thing, right? Because when I look, and I think this is like, again, why genres I feel like should be more thoroughly established in the TTRPG scene over everything else.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, TTRPGs, especially for me, can be ruined by perception, right? If it feels like in like, we'll do the D&D and Pathfinder because that's the one we talked about the most on the channel. I liked D&D for a good amount of time, but then I played Pathfinder, and then I couldn't go back to D&D because the only thing that was going through my mind every time I touch D&D now is, why am I doing this when there's another system out there that feels better and lets me do what I want better? You know, you just can't get around it. It's like one of those things where it comes to. And I mean, especially after discovering Legend in the Mist, I find that now, in a way that I never knew before, I just interact with the idea of TTRPGs differently than even like a lot of players in our group. Because for me, it's about the practicality and the meshing of mechanics and narrative, right? Because I want to tell an interesting story, and I want the story to be impactful, and I want the story to be relevant and ever present. I don't really want moments in my TTRPG where we're playing a game rather than telling the story. Because that's just like, all right, you know, let's play Pathfinder, a game I've been known to love, did a lot of form this channel based on, right? But now to me, it's just like, okay, now we're telling the story until combat comes up. And now we're playing the game Pathfinder and doing the combat things. Because the gameplay mechanics for combat have so little narrative relevance. The only narrative relevance you can apply to combat is interpretation, like how do you express your abilities, and scenario. Is the combat we are currently doing relevant to the story with stakes that are impactful to the story? And to be honest, running Pathfinder, you don't want every single combat to be like high stakes to the story. You want your players to just enjoy playing the combat. I've done that before. I've made combats that are just there because they're fun, and that's it. But that's from a mechanical standpoint. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when I compare that to Legend in the Mists, everything, like Legend in the Mist does not differentiate gameplay modes from combat to like social encounters to even crafting. Like they all utilize the same systems, and those systems lean on your character's narrative, on your story, because in Legend in the Mist, the mechanics are the narrative and the narrative are the mechanics. What your character can do, as dictated by your tags, dictates how good you are at that thing. And you can't just have one tag that can just do anything. And one tag that can do anything is even then not that good, because it only gives you that +1 modifier. So what happens is you intrinsically make your character stacked with tags that let you do like 1, 2 things, maybe 3 things, and it creates for interesting styles of gameplay where the mechanics are emergent. And so there's no stats in Legend in the Mist. There's only how many of my character's traits, experiences, or abilities stack to do the thing I want to do. And every check in Legend in the Mist so far that we have done in our either our group plays or even my solo plays are infinitely more interesting intrinsically than a skill check or a combat roll in other TTRPGs, when you're looking at it purely from a narrative relevance, like or narrative mechanical perspective. Right now, I'm not saying this as a way of saying that it's not fun playing Pathfinder, or it's not fun playing Lancer, or anything like that, because those games are fun. I think completely and wholeheartedly they are fun to play, and their mechanics are interesting. Anima has probably one of the best summoning mechanics and / like monster based mechanics. Like Anima gives you the rules to make custom creatures that the players even have access to for the sake of like creatures they summon or their familiars or anything like that. On a mechanical scale, that's so much more interesting than anything like Pathfinder has done for summoning.
Yeah, like Pathfinder Summoner more and more I think is a cool class, but like I have to constantly compare it to the sheer like absolute aura that when you decide to sit down and play Summoner, your GM just hands you the monster manual. Because that is what, when you're saying I want to play a Summoner, that is the image you have in your head. Not like, yeah, you can summon some monsters, but also like, oh, you have one main summon that you're popping in. Like when I think of the classical Summoner, I think of if there's an enemy that exists in this game world, the Summoner controls it.
Yeah,
it is that is the class fantasy that in Summoner hits that alongside every other possible interpretation of a Summoner.
Yeah,
like it's that. Like I get what you mean. I think it is an interesting perspective on it, only because like I just strongly don't have that. But it makes sense of the way of there's a discrepancy when you're trying to tell a story, especially trying to tell a story of trying to make something feel real and like feel like it is actually happening and realistic in the moment. And then you then basically go the like Final Fantasy boss like fight music, and you're all standing in a line with the music. There is a direct mode that you're switching on and off. Because it's then like you said, it's interface. How do you interface with a tabletop game that is different then? Because in my head, I'm like, I'm here to play the tabletop game because I want the gameplay, and like, it's the thing that's separating me from I'm sitting at a table just kind of improvising with my friends, and like there's a game we're playing too. So I'm getting the best of both worlds, where it's the oh boy 2 cakes meme, if you've ever seen that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I am with it. Because for like Pathfinder in particular, I'm like, oh boy, I get the cool roleplay and like actually intentional like roleplay and characterization that our table does, alongside Pathfinder combat from a GM who knows how to work the system really well. Oh boy, 2 cakes.
Yeah.
And like that is the perspective I have. But there is such a clear discrepancy of like the middle of, all right, it is gameplay mode, okay, it is story mode. It does feel like that.
Yeah, and I mean, again, this is why I said there's a difference, and this difference didn't exist before, because it's like I didn't know, right? The game didn't exist to me. So what was I doing? I was making the best of what I had before. And now that I know that Legend in the Mist exists, it's hard for me to have the same experiences I had before, because for me, and like this is not derivative or despairing, I guess is not the right word, but close enough, of anyone else and their enjoyment of TTRPGs. But for me, it's always has been, since forever, what, like telling the story of characters, what makes them good, what makes them unique. And like I loved the games, like I loved Anima, because its advantage and disadvantage system added texture and interesting things to your character. So, it's like in most other TTRPGs that texture doesn't exist, because you're working with nothing but stats. And that's not what we're talking about today. I'm not disparaging people who like stats or anything like that. This is just what we Alex was the one who brought up Legend in the Mist this time. That was not me.
I expressly brought it up because if you're going to point at a game that doesn't have stats in any traditional way, that's the one.
Yeah.
And it's strictly for the point of for like, on my perspective, it is a gameplay situation, because I wouldn't even call myself a stat lover. It's just, I like it when stats feel good, because like I like it when the gameplay feels good. Oh, that's a crazy take from me, I know. But essentially it is that. It's like when the stats are implemented in a way that's bad, it doesn't feel good because the gameplay kind of sucks. Funnily enough, it's related to this, because it was Tuesday, I brought up, it was off stream, we're chatting about like Legend of the Mist and all that. One of the comparisons I brought up in this, because it was me figuring out this take I just said today.
Sure.
Of my comparison with Binding of Isaac and Enter the Gungeon.
Right.
Where it is two games that, if you take it on its broad surface, they are trying to do similar things. Top-down twin-stick shooter roguelite. They're both like, that is what they both are, but they take different directions. Some decisions I think are way more interesting. I think Enter the Gungeon's like actual like guns and how synergies work in Enter the Gungeon is really fun. And then there's other directions the game take that I think is worse. I hate Gungeon bosses. Like, I don't think they are fun, because one of the things these bosses do too much is they have moments where you're not allowed to deal damage.
Yeah.
And the part I like about Binding of Isaac is it feels like you are giving a bunch of toys to the player to break it. And so an Isaac run is always, at the end of it, you're just blasting through everything, and it's very fun. Like, that is the gameplay of Isaac, and that's what makes it cool. Right. They both take different directions, and I end up preferring Isaac, even though there are some decisions it makes, and decisions Edmund McMullen says he doesn't like anymore, that I think are more fun, even though they are worse objectively gameplay-wise. And like, that is the perspective I take when like Legend of the Mist, I think, makes some phenomenal decisions, phenomenal choices. If I'm opting into certain different gameplay styles, I'm going to favor different games that are built for it. Sure. But Legend in the Mist is actually, for the first time, a game that when someone says, wow, I can tell any kind of story in this system, I agree, and I think that is a positive.
Yeah, that's actually a funny point to make.
I hate that sentiment for other games, because all you are doing is limiting yourself from like the fun of intentional design for the genre you're engaging in. You are having a worse experience by like, hey, let's tell a sci-fi game and we're gonna do it in a Pathfinder instead of Starfinder. I think you are kind of shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
You should play something that is built to do the thing you want instead of forcing it. It's the thing we criticize 5e for constantly. And even if a game does it good, I'm never gonna have the stance because of that there should be a universal system that can do everything.
Yeah, and if I'm gonna be honest as well, I don't think Legend in the Mist is a perfect system. If anyone had any doubts about that, that's definitely still the case. It's not perfect, but to use your similar kind of analogy to make it make sense, it's like playing a twin stick shooter without ever knowing that a first person shooter existed. And you just wanted that experience of like
Oh yeah.
using barriers and shooting enemies. And then suddenly you discover this new type of gameplay that was more like you're still shooting people, you're still using barriers and all this kind of stuff like that. But now it just expressed in a way that's so different that they can't even really be considered the same kind of game. And that's kind of like what happened when I really started digging into Legend in the Mist. And if I was to say a flaw of Legend in the Mist, I do think that they could. There's a lot of direction. There's a lot of things you can do in the book, and it's not expressly all interpretive. Like they do have hardcore rules, and like and I'm still mastering the system. I remember in the last session we played, Slug wanted to do quick casting better, and I was like, well, no, because the whole point is if you have a skill that can do anything, it'd be really strong if you could do it without prep. But I had forgotten that in the game there is an extra feat, which is kind of like an extra thing you can do in combat with your power outside of just like express status or tag based stuff. You can take an additional action for 2 power. So if Slug wanted to quick cast, all she has to do is just generate enough power in a check and then spend at least 1 of that on, you know, something that's not an extra feat, and then spend 2 of that power to take an extra action. So she could quick cast, it would just cost 2 of the power from the check that she's getting her mana up, you know, increasing her mana status or whatever. And like that's the thing, right? There's a lot of actual gameplay mechanics. I mean, there's improvements in the game that rather than adding a tag to your character, which gives you more power potentially and gives you more of you know, like functionality in the setting, improvements are purely gameplay mechanical. There's one of my favorite ones. I think it's from Skill or Trade. It might be in a couple of them actually, but it's one where it's like, if you use this skill to learn something new about the world, mark improve. Which is interesting. It shows that your character's learning, but also it works around how the improve system already works, which is you normally only can improve when you trigger a weakness or reflect at camp. But you can have these improvements that affect the game mechanically that give you something that's interesting, but while still being narratively tied, because it's showing that your character is doing something that the gameplay mechanics doesn't necessarily address, but getting some extra benefit out of it. And I think Legend of the Mist just needs a little bit more direction. And honestly, like I played a couple different, like Booter and I, we've played Cradle from Will Wright, the writer. We played in the Cradle series, which is really good, but unfortunately there's so many like standard things that character in the Cradle universe does that it consumed all our themes, and so our character is mostly just combat characters at this point. We also invented recently a Monster Tamer game, and it just uses completely different like mechanics, still within the system, but like different types of mechanics in the system intends. So like the game can't do everything. You still have to make shit up if you're trying to do something outside of its intents. And so there's ways you can actually create games using the system, which I actually don't remember what Son of Oaks calls it. It's a specific system name.
Whatever the actual like engine, and like the engine you could probably license and utilize in your own game.
But you can use that engine and create additional mechanics and framework around it to create actually different experiences that don't rely on the players just kind of making up mechanics, and instead, you know, like fleshes them out for you to do. So it still has expression. It's not like necessarily the perfect Omni system, but for the kinds of games I like, right, where the story is as much a part of the gameplay as the gameplay itself, I'm having a hard time just like coming to terms with that. You know what I mean?
I think it is it's a really good system for having these wide amounts of stories. And I also think it's a good thing where my genuinely more and more as we play it. 'Cause maybe if I play like a fuck ton of it, like a lot of it, I'd be able to develop something. Because it's the thing. I don't have any major criticisms for Legend of the Mist outside of if anything, I think there should be. I think it does a good job at trying to help people who maybe struggle to think of something like on the spot or like improv something, because I think there is a difference between your first character and your later characters. Because surprisingly, this is a game where you can make your character wrong.
Yep.
And I think if anything, having a few more little like expressions and roadblocks of that might be a good thing. But that's fixed by learning the system.
I mean, so yeah, and that's like any TTRPG, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, I agree, actually. To be fair, right? When I had you guys make your characters, I didn't want you to look at the rule book. And I feel like if you guys had looked at the rule book, maybe some things would have made more sense. But the thing is I was trying to translate the experience to people who play more traditional style TTRPGs.
It's the point of you're making a person. You are not making you're not making a build.
You're not
distinction.
You're not choosing a build, and that's kind of I think an important distinction here. Other TTRPGs, it's fun to be creative in those TTRPGs, right? But at the end of the day, you're just choosing different sequences of feats and abilities and stat layouts in order to do the thing you want to do. And there's fun in that, and I agree. And I think that can be fun. It's fun. I love my Archivist build in Pathfinder 2e because it's not an obvious build. Playing a Thaumaturge who goes into Magus to pick up the book shield feat so that your tome implement can also be a shield is really fun and is really interesting, though honestly doesn't play that well in the game because of action economy. Because raising shield is an action, which sucks. But
yeah.
Oh well. But that's fun, and I agree that that's fun. But I could do, and this is kind of where, like, this is I think where the divide is. I can do that same character in Legend in the Mist, and they can do more of what I want sooner than and less time than it would take in Pathfinder 2e. And honestly, I could even have more mechanics to make it more interesting.
Yeah, like that is the distinction for what type of game is going in. Cuz like there's the degree of fun that I think having a stat block is nice for. And it's there is a level of fun playing within the constraints of something. Yeah. Playing within like the rules it's giving you. And Legend of Mist does it too. It's why like my main thing for the game is less of I have actual criticisms of it. It's more of anytime I reach a light criticism, I then stop because I'm like, no, this isn't a criticism. This is me asking for something the game's not doing. And like that's not how you should view a game, I think.
Sure.
It's not healthy to criticize it, and because like there's not even anything strong I'm thinking of. It's more of like when I'm like, man, I really like how this game does it. Well, yeah, it's the gameplay of that game. This game is different in its own gameplay. It's like, okay, yeah, that's not a fault of Legend of Mist's game design. It is a difference of like how do I want to interface with the game, and because that's always a different point. To the point where like I walk away from it being like, I just don't have a lot of issues with the system. I think it's really good for what it's doing.
Well, and that's
just a strength I think you can have of a game. Is just if you walk away from it being like, it does what it's doing. It does what it wants. It does it really well, and I get a lot of use out of it. That's just a big positive in that game's flavor.
Sure. Though framing matters, right? Because when you say it's good at what it does, that doesn't imply necessarily anything because you haven't elaborated on what it does, and that has context in itself. And I'm not asking for the context. I'm saying
I'm saying more of like what it is a success when a game shows you like, hey, this is the game. Here's all the things that us as a game we want you to be able to do, and we want you to be able to achieve in the style of play we want you to do. And then you walk away from it being like, hell yeah, fuck, you kind of like nailed what you set out to do, man. Good for you. Yeah. That's what I think Legend of Mist does. In the same way, I think Pathfinder does it really well. If you don't listen to a lot of the extra stuff of people talking about it, because to be honest, it's the same thing as in 5e where people tell you about like this game, you can do anything. You can play anything and tell gripping stories. Like, well, the gameplay isn't doing that. A lot of that is on
Sure.
you and the party. That's not like I would say in the same way. Intense roleplay mechanics is not the point of Pathfinder 2e as like a game design. It's a part of the game you tack on.
Right.
So there's those elements of a game. A game where it's user experience versus what does the system set out to actually achieve. And it sets out to tell a very interesting, like, this is a system where we have a wide amount of things you can do with the contextual tag system. You can tell a lot of wide-ranging stories and make a very fleshed out character. And I walk away from Legend of Mist being like, yeah, I did that.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, there's nothing wrong with comparing games as far as interpreting your level of enjoyment, because TTRPGs take time. You take time to play them, and it takes time to tell a story, because you can't just tell a story. Well, you can tell a story in one shot, but like it's not going to have the same value as if you had spent more days telling that story and fleshing it out. And so there's nothing wrong with doing a comparison of like what do I find fun in TTRPGs, and what does this game offer to it in some ways or another. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And again, like, there might just be the situation of a difference in gameplay styles that didn't exist before because I didn't know this game existed, or at least I was not fully knowledgeable on how it worked and everything like that. But I do want to address a point of this constant, like, not necessarily criticism, but more like a desire for, like, I wish Legend in the Mist had more constrictions. I like working in a constrictions in a game system, and yada yada yada. There are constrictions in Legend in the Mist, because having one tag do a thing isn't good enough to even be considered good at the thing in the game, because typically what you're doing is going to have some level of obstacle. And if it doesn't, then it's not even a check, right? And you only start off with 12 tags total. And so if you consider that if you want your character to do 4 things kind of okay, then you are your character can do pretty much only those 4 things, you know? Maybe you can have a tag that can be expressed, that can do multiple things. That can happen. But it's a little bit hard, especially when you start stacking tags, because you can't just stack the same tag over and over and over again. They need to have different contexts, and they need to be able to apply, where you need to genuinely be able to ask yourself, is this helping for the action I'm doing? And also, because actions in the system are contextual based, they some tags that you normally apply in a situation might not always apply in a situation. One of my favorite ways of expressing this mechanically is if you want to play a barbarian character, or a character who's like a brawler, you know, they're there to get punched in the face and punch people back. That can be expressed very clearly in the game by having tags dedicated to like resisting pain or injury, because those tags don't do anything until your character becomes injured. But when your character becomes injured, normally a harm status is a negative status that applies to all your checks. You're injured, and obviously it's harder for you to do things. But if you have tags dedicated to fighting harm status that only apply when you have a harm status, then every tag that you pick up that helps fight harm status makes your character mechanically and narratively better at acting when injured or in some form of pain, which is interesting. And characters don't have that innately, and as I'm sure some of you have seen, not having defensive tags can be actually kind of bad when you're in a scenario where you can't necessarily stop a threat from coming. And so
you gotta have a fight. It was an interesting bit for our combat on Tuesday, where it just kind of revealed because I never once considered the idea of a defensive tag.
Yeah.
Before that, and it's like, oh shit, that's actually kind of needed here. And I will say, to clarify my own point, because I think it's less of Legend in the Mist doesn't have constraints, because it does. It is a game that has a lot of surprising mechanical depth than when you might first look at it. I think it's more of each game operates with its own level of constraints of playing inside whatever thing you're doing.
Right.
The same way of like the fun of designing a really effective, say like rogue trader game character versus a really good Wrath of the Righteous character. You're operating in like same developers in that moment, same style of CRPG, but you're operating in a different like set of systems that you're playing in, and so things are done differently. So you're working within those rules to make something that you find the most fun and could be the most effective. It is like operating within the constraints of a specific game is the gameplay in some aspects. And in some games, it's more fun than others. But sometimes you look at their constraints and it's less like, this is less intentional good design and this is more incompetence. I really like am thinking about it.
Yeah.
And other ones, it's just like really interesting. Because that character creation is super, super sick in Legend of the Mist, because I think it's the best expression I've seen of a game like really pushing a narrative, because I think it is such a good stat air quote expression of a person.
Yes.
I think it does it phenomenally. A surprising level, because I remember the day when we first talked about Legend of the Mist, like just look at the website and we're like, tag system, I don't know what the fuck that means, maybe it's cool. And like a lot of our points were like, I don't know, it could be fun. Then we did it and we're like, yeah, they kind of nailed it. It was kind of really cool. To the point where I'm wondering, is this like a hidden genre we don't know about? Are there games that are like inspired by Legend of the Mist, or that Legend of the Mist is inspired by, that operate similarly?
Yes. So there's a lot of games out there that before this have used or at least they've used like a ambiguous skill system where you don't have specific skills, but instead you write down like a skill or like a situation where your character is useful, and then they apply in the situations that they do, or maybe you need to spend a resource, because I know there's some games where like you have these, but you need to spend a resource to apply the bonus on top of usually like some kind of like attribute system, right? Like you'll have attributes, and then you'll have these situational skills or scenarios that you can spend an attribute, or you can spend a meta point in order to apply that on top of it to give you a much better chance of succeeding, because how the game works is your character is normally good at certain things based on your stats, but it's not like super good unless you have these niche situation points. Fate Core does this. Daggerheart is doing this currently. Lancer does this as well, because Lancer doesn't have actual definitive skills, even though there's like the ones they show in the book that everyone takes because they're kind of just like, what would you do in a situation for your pilot in these scenarios?
Yeah.
And before Legend in the Mist, they had City of Mists, which had a very similar system, but in City of Mists, how the system works is you have your tags, you stack your tags to get a bonus, but then you would use the bonus for a specific move to do something. And this is actually taking away from Powered by the Apocalypse, because it's very obvious that this system is very heavily influenced by Powered by the Apocalypse with the 2d6 and the partial success, full success, or failure system. But Legend in the Mist is the first one that has created not just the tag system, but statuses, and has created different mechanics that tags and statuses can interact in a scene. Like we did during the last session, ablative statuses. Ablative statuses don't apply to checks, but instead create an additional threshold that you have to get through in order to do something. So if something is wet 3 and you want to light it on fire, you need to do something to reduce its wet 3 status before you can start giving it a burn status, you know. And there are a lot of different ways that statuses and tags can apply in a scene. Like weaknesses can become positives in some situations, or vice versa. Sometimes an enemy status can be positive for you because it represents a weak point in the thing you're trying to do. And everything you're trying to do is Not a move. It's just whatever you decide to do. So if you want to buff up in that round, enemy tags won't be a negative to you, because unless they're actively stopping you in some way, you know, you get that ability to buff yourself up, and then you can even use that buff to counteract a consequence, like Slug's character summoning a bunch of dudes in the middle of the fight and then being attacked because that, you know, she wasn't addressing the fact that there's raiders attacking her at the moment. And then she used those dudes to defend herself with, which is a very anime scene where it's just like, get the caster, and then they raise up a bunch of skeletons in their way and, you know, stop them from being hurt, more or less.
Yeah.
So the game has a lot of mechanics, but I think if Legend of the Mist could do anything, it would be creating a better representation of the mechanical weight of the system, because everyone I've talked to so far who's checked the game out calls it a rules light system, which it's not, because it functionally can't be rules light if you have to really consider how rules work for any more than a second when it comes to like how anything happens. And then we get these situations where we never, when comparing other TTRPGs or talking about other TTRPGs, talked about the restrictions that those games provide or don't provide until we started talking about Legend of the Mist. And that's because that felt like a talking point when it really isn't.
Because it's more of it's been the issue of rules light game where, because that's why I've been very careful, especially knowing more about it, to not call Legend of the Mist a rules light game, and like always calling it like a narrative type game. Because I think it's a more apt description if we're trying to like lump it in with other stuff, and like trying to have these like defined genres. Because it is not rules light, 100% not.
Yeah, I mean, if I was to rate it on that scale, I would say it rules somewhere in the realm of like rules medium. And it's not crunchy, even though there's a lot of context and there's a lot of ways you can consider how checks might come out. You can kind of just be like, yeah, that works, because there's not a reason to say no in that scenario. I do that all the time when I'm running the games for you guys. You're just like, can I just make a periscope rat set of eyes? And I'm just like, I would allow you to have big ears, but sure, go ahead. Yeah. You know, I don't care. It does the same thing mechanically as something that I would consider to be simpler, so why not?
Yeah, exactly. Like, it is, I think it is more of a common issue we have in those games. Because I think if you try to make a game that has no constraints at all, the rules like games that are like, you can do anything, but in reality, all that kind of aims up to is you can utilize anything to do anything, and so then the gameplay just kind of becomes nothing.
Yeah.
And there's no point to anything.
There's no expression of ability or difference between characters, so it becomes a gray mass of whatever.
Yeah, intelligence means the same thing as strength, like as it goes on and on and on, because you can find ways to do just your best roll for your best thing. And like that's what having no constraints does. Yeah. Legend of the Mist hits the balance really well of having just enough so the game feels intentional, while also being really open to letting you do a lot of different things and express a lot of things. And so it has just enough. And then because of that, it makes me look at a game that has a lot more and like a lot of limiting factors to what the game is. Yeah. And then it just makes me look at it harder of like, okay, so this is a thing I've always taken for granted. Like just existing in a game. Why is it like this? Because that's the fun bit. Just it's the aspect of this type of game where it opens up, I didn't ever think about playing a game like this. Like, or I didn't think a game like this was a thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's where, again, right, the scenario of I liked other TTRPGs more before Cradle because I didn't have the context for Cradle in my brain. And so what I was doing was trying to make other games more like Cradle with more like Legend in the Mist without knowing that Legend in the Mist existed. I wanted to give games more narrative context. I wanted to give games more flexibility and weight in doing certain things. I was getting frustrated because like Pathfinder, I really like Pathfinder. Making builds in Pathfinder is really fun. But you know what really sucks is needing to play 20 sessions in order to be able to do a thing that I wanted to do from the beginning.
Yeah.
And mechanically do those things, right? It's not just the idea of the thing. It's not just like the flavor of the thing, right? Because I would hate Cradle if I didn't feel like my choices of tags and abilities didn't provide for me unique mechanical benefits. But they do, because context is the mechanic.
It's a type of beat for this game where it's the thing I constantly advocate for of why playing different types of tabletop games is just healthy.
Yeah.
I think one of the big strengths of playing different tabletop games is gaining the ability to look at why does this do this while this does that, and like trying to figure that out, or seeing how a game is operating in its written rules, look at it and be like, oh, this isn't even like hard to implement. Like, this is a thing I could implement into this other game. Because more of like playing this game has me thinking, if I were to ever run a tabletop game, it just has me more and more in my mentality of not prompting rolls and just like allowing for certain stuff to happen. Because in the aspect of like, I wish other games had these like tag systems. It's got more and more it's built into like, this is why I like expertise things that directly say like, this skill, I have a little word tag next to it. So now if this comes up, situationally, I have a benefit for my character, while also being able to look at like, maybe this character, in modern day setting, they're a getaway driver for a crime group. And so if this player was asking about like car shit, I wouldn't prompt the roll. I would give them extra insight, because just naturally of what I know the character is, you would have access to seeing certain things other people won't. And essentially that is I'm implementing a in the background tag of like car nut that this player now has.
Yeah.
And it's got me considering a lot of those elements of like having these same types of things, how easily could they be implemented? And then it's just lining a lot more into like my own takes already of how to tabletop. Like, I think GMs prompt rolls way too often. And if you really don't want your players to like fail something, why did you ask them to roll it? Or like, you shouldn't, unless there's a realistic opportunity of failure.
Yeah, which is kind of why I like
make it easy.
I like in Legend in the Mist in the book, they have specific moments about this kind of stuff. A vignette is supposed to be a scene in which a challenge arises that the players need to interact with. And so it's more of like kind of like shoelacing in a way. You're kind of removing some of the intermediate parts in the story and only applying, even if it's random, the part that you're going to watch in the movie, you know. You're going to have a shopping episode. If you have a shopping episode in Legend in the Mist, unless the GM wants to throw a vignette, which I think would be fun, they'll just be like, okay, you go out and you buy the items that you want to buy. And if the player's like, well, you know, I want that to be interesting, then the GM's like, okay, then we have a vignette we can do. You come up to a store and there's this shopkeeper who seems rather miserly, but his wares are really calling to you. You could probably strike a deal, but he's going to make it hard, you know? And again, in Legend of the Mist, what I think is more interesting is even having money is a mechanic you can interact with, because it's really easy in Legend of the Mist to be like, okay, your character has a reasonable amount of money on them to exist. So you want to buy some rope? I'm going to let you buy the rope without giving you any negative, you know, you're not losing money effectively. It's just like you can't buy a ton of rope at this moment because your character doesn't have that much money. But if you have a wealth status, like you guys do, you can use that wealth status in the scenario where you're bargaining with the merchant, you know. Where
the only other game I can point to that plays with wealth like that is fucking Rogue Trader.
Yeah,
but like that's strictly because in the lore of a Rogue Trader, you have so much money that like it does just become meaningless.
Yeah,
and I think it's really interesting whenever someone plays with wealth as a mechanic outside of you have this much money.
Yeah, and because wealth as a status can apply power to a scene, that you can ask a question. Like, a check at the end of the day is like asking a question that the answer is not necessarily sure. You know, can I convince this guy to sell this to me for cheap? That's a question. So you use your various face tags if you have any, or business tags if you have any, and you can use your wealth status to make it more likely you're spending money. But if you spend less of your wealth, you know, you're only spending 1 of your wealth 3, for instance, or for you guys, because of how the statuses work, which I think is also interesting, if you expended wealth 1 on this check, you would still have effectively wealth 3 because your wealth 1 part of your status is filled in. You would just unfill that slot, essentially, representing an excess of money, you know, like your top end is more or less the same. You just had enough of a lower like threshold of money that you could expend. And Legend in the Mist, you can provide mechanics and interesting ways of interacting in scenes for any scenario. You want to have, like, that combat we had on Tuesday was super interesting, right? Oh, I guess. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, it was an interesting fight. Like, because it's the kind of example of just like, this is the difference of how this plays out in a different system. Because that fight does just operate differently based on if you are playing that in like Pathfinder, Anima, or like whatever. It is another situation we had that expresses, okay, so this is the different gameplay of Legend in the Mist.
Yeah, and I'll agree
because you're interfacing with it differently.
The combat works differently. That's a fair comparison to make, because it does.
Yeah.
But you could have that same combat in a social situation where you're dealing with, you go to a noble party, and your job is to requisition aid for an important thing, slaying a dragon, doing all that kind of stuff. But the nobles don't want to give up their money, and they're going to be kind of all playing against you because you don't necessarily fit into this scenario. So rather than, you know, power in numbers, working in, you could have powers and numbers reflecting 2 different things, where in combat you're fighting a bunch of people, but in a social situation, all these people having the same opinion is galvanizing that opinion, making it hard to get through. And so you need to whittle that down. You need to break them up. You can have mechanics for pitting them against each other. You can have mechanics for getting some of them on your side. You could prep before that conversation by getting dirt on people, by, you know, either finding it yourself or paying for someone to get dirt on them. And these little dirty little secrets could be individual tags, or even a status that you could apply to different nobles in that party to whittle them down until eventually you convince them that giving to your cause is worthwhile, or at the very least less risky.
Yeah, like, because the only difference there is because these are actions you can take in different tabletop games, and these can play out the same way. It's just the difference of, like, you can then add to people's sheets and add to the situation a direct mechanical element that expresses what happened instead of a story element that you've introduced.
Yeah, well, and there's also just mechanics that don't exist in other TTRPGs, right? Like, in Pathfinder, you want to have a social intrigue moment. The only mechanic is make a persuasion check versus enemy DC. Now, sure, you could narratively go and get some information, maybe learn something to get yourself like a circumstance bonus, for instance, on this thing. But at the end of the day, the only real mechanic you're interacting with are skill checks, you know, because in order to get that circumstance bonus, you're just making another skill check, you know?
Yeah, unless your GM introduces, like, different things, because, you know what, I'll give that to the 5e player, the 5e, like, good GMs who really focus on it. I've seen a lot of examples where they're just good at doing that.
Yeah.
Of just adding, like, hey, this social encounter, there's actually, like, there's a suspicion meter that's being filled, and an intrigue. Like, there's all these, like, other mechanics you can add to a moment, which when I'm thinking of it, I'm like, okay, so you're kind of adding clocks from a lot of the Powered by Apocalypse stuff.
Yeah, or in Legend in the Mist, a count up status.
Yeah.
Or
There's
countdown
ways of
status.
like expressing it, but it's
Yeah.
just, does the game directly give you a tool to express and show it, or is the GM doing it because the GM is adding something to the game?
Yeah. Is your GM cool?
Yeah.
What do these games provide? And like, again, I said Legend of the Mist isn't perfect, and I think it's completely valid to prefer playing other games over Legend of the Mist. Don't get me wrong. It's just like, for me, for the kind of player I am, for the kind of GM I am, Legend of the Mist does many things that I like better than other TTRPGs. Character growth is consistent, and almost every session your character is getting new abilities, capabilities, or anything. I'm a progression junkie. That's why I love roguelites. I love getting new things all the time. This game does that. This game has I've said it so many times before, it has procedural generated mechanics based on the context of the scene. And you don't have to, as a GM, because this is what I do a lot, I go out of my way to invent mechanics in other games to do things. And that usually is like trying to make the system twist and turn to make that work. And it just works in Legend of the Mist, the ability, like even again talking about the example earlier of wanting to fast cast. Well, that's just we could do that using extra feet. Like, the mechanic already existed. I just didn't think of it at the time when we did it. I don't have to invent a fast casting mechanic to make it work better in the system for what a character wants to do. And I think more importantly than any of those is my character isn't a bunch of numbers that only really tell me what I'm loosely capable of and doesn't really reflect my character or their experiences, like even mechanically, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm playing Pathfinder, if I'm playing D&D, hell, even if I'm playing Anima, though in Anima I'll give it, you can boost a stat or a secondary ability so high that you almost can't fail. But if I'm playing a wizard who's studied magic all his life, there can be many times I come up in a scenario where I roll my Arcana, and it could even be a thing that I know, like contextually in the story, but if the GM makes me roll, I have like a 20% chance of failure, And unless I built for it specifically, which again in Anima you can do it to the point where you can't fail, though that makes it hard to do other things. Hyper investing in secondary abilities in Anima definitely comes at a cost.
Yeah, 100%. Which is a flaw of the system. Like, how it handles secondary abilities, I think, is one of the game's many flaws. I think it is one of the bigger ones, in my opinion.
But in Legend in the Mist, if I have a tag knows ancient history, or even knows the history of a thing, like if I have the contextual tag for a thing specifically, the GM doesn't even need to make me roll. The book says if your character has a tag that just encompasses the check completely, due to specificity, they don't even need to roll. It's like how specialities work in the
Cosmere
RPG. Yes, correct. Which I love how it works in the Cosmere RPG.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's really, really good. Now, also, I've been hyping up Legend of the Mist. And again, there's going to be a day where I'm going to want to just fuck with the numbers of a game. I'm going to want that gameplay interface when I'm playing a TTRPG, because I don't think you can play anything forever unless you have a mental illness.
It is mind-boggling. I can never get around the people who only play one thing endlessly. I'm like, how do you not get bored? Like, these aren't, at the end of the day, you're playing the same thing. You're just like, D&D is the one that gets me all the time, because it's just like, at the end of the day, you're always just rolling a d20, adding a small number. So like, how does that get interesting gameplay?
Yeah, and so it's the same thing here. Legend of the Mist is great, and honestly, I'm going to do my best for my friends because I'm a good person. But it's going to be hard for me to enjoy other TTRPGs in the same way, because Legend of the Mist literally just hits all my all my points, and that's a me thing, right? That's no one else's problem. It's not anyone else's fault that they don't like the game as much as I do. It's my obsession. I'm fine with that. But it's just one of those things where if I'm looking at it, it's just like, why in this narrative based game that we play for the narrative based aspects, because we're not necessarily number goblins, spreadsheet warriors, are we playing a game where it's almost painful and you have to make sacrifices to do the things you want your character to do, when you can just do it in Legend in the Mist and it'd just be easier and if anything, probably even better than you could do in those other games. Like my Archivist build in Pathfinder really hits its stride at level 12. That's a long way into the game.
Yeah.
When in Legend in the Mist, I can make an Archivist character with my spell tome or with my implements tome, and give it the tag, shielded tome, so I can use it as a defensive item, and the tome applies to that because it's the tome that's giving me the shielding. And and then I could even apply other tags, from other themes onto that, or I could just increase how powerful that shield is, that, how defensive that book is for me, or even the types of defenses it could do. Like it could be, anti-projectile enchantment on it, so it applies extra beneficially against projectiles, which I find is super cool. It's super interesting. And I wanted it to also be able to cast spells. Well, I can have, accumulated spell, or accumulated, oh goodness, what are they called? You have the sheet of magic that you can cast.
It's the spell slot type.
It's not spell slot, but it's scrolls. There you go, scrolls.
Okay.
Scroll magic. I have scroll magic, right? And with my scroll magic, rather than having, I could probably have some default ones, but I could have it where my scroll magic can be a thing that when I camp, I can scribe spells into my book that I can use over the course of that day. And I can have a bunch of tags that are going towards writing as many extra tags or status effects from those scrolls that I use every day from my book, And then I still have 2 more themes that I can make my character more interesting than just being an archivist on and do cool things with. Yeah,
because I think that's why I specify the I think the strength of playing different games, because in my head it's the situation of I at some point in the future there are games I would love to GM. They'd be very in person, kind of when we're all living together kind of thing. Because I would love to tell some World of Darkness stories.
Yeah.
And I don't even think Vampire the Masquerade, Mage the Ascension, or Hunter the Reckoning, all that. I don't think they're fantastic systems. I think they're neat. Is probably the strongest one. I think Mage the Ascension is a very neat system because it's doing things in a fucked up weird way. But I don't think it fully aligns with our group's playstyle. Its rules for Magic is very shrugs.
It's all over the place. I know. I have the Mage of Ascension 3rd edition, I think.
Be probably revised, maybe. Because it's first, second revised, and then 20th.
I know.
Unless you're talking about the Chronicles Mage. But regardless, there are stories that I would love to tell, and the thing I've been endlessly chipping away at is through my videos. It's been the fun process of video making. Of what is my interpretation of the World of Darkness? How would I portray it? And what is canon? What is real in mine? One thing that's real in mine is that every source book is a thing. So you guys will have to deal with mummies and werewolves and mages and shit.
Yeah.
Because I find that more fun. But there's going to be lessons I have taken from different tabletop games. The biggest one I am going to take from Legend of the Mist is just the idea of tags and the idea of contextual storytelling for your character, and really hammering in even harder my mentality of you just don't need to prompt your players to roll for everything, because there are times where you can look at it and be like, that's basically like you have tagged for this. Sure, man. That's one of the things I'll take. As it's also the thing of I don't know. It's my own thing for how I interface with games, because that's literally more what this conversation is how do we personally interface with tabletop as a genre, which is a fun conversation to have.
I agree.
Because there is a big difference that is always important to have in the sand for internet things, is talking about how you personally interface with something and how you prefer something isn't shitting on it.
Yeah.
It's always the internet's first thing, because like, honestly, for all the games we've talked about, except for 5e, we've been nothing but positive on.
Yeah.
Like, quite honestly. We've only been talking in the field of our favorite games, and then 5e is here because, I don't know, it's like the little brother you have to include, but no one likes. Interfacing with games, everyone's just kind of interacts with art differently. And that's what makes these conversations fascinating. And then it comes across, because I view this in the very like movie first, like the cinematic lens where I look at it, where there's an attitude that I don't think has been happening here in any way, but there's an attitude that I always like shy away from, that is the most annoying movie criticism, that is I went into this movie and I was disappointed it wasn't another movie. It's like, well, that's not a failing on that movie, that's a failing on you. That, because you can sometimes, there are things out here where the way you interface with something is a you problem, not a game problem. Tying in the Monster Hunter conversation from the beginning of this, me not liking early Monster Hunter is a problem with how I interface with Monster Hunter, not on the game's fault. And like bringing that to tabletop games, there are tabletop games that I just genuinely don't like how it plays, because I can't interface with it the way I want to. And then there's a bunch of games where I just enjoy how I can play it. And I'm happy to put Legend of the Mist on that table. And I'm glad, like, it is a game that if we have a full campaign of it, I will be happy.
Me too.
But it'll be on the repertoire, where I'm like I said, if we have if the decision is Anima, Pathfinder, Legend of the Mist, I'd be like, fuck, man, what do I pick? I love all three, and all three have kind of just laid in different lessons in how I'd want to interface with my games and how I want to run them. And that's a strength, players out there, GMs out there. You should look at how other games do things, because a lot of times it can literally just make your games better. Because I think if we go to Anima and you subtly start adding some tag bullshit, like
I really
start
can't.
adding
Not
some
in the
things,
same way.
I don't think we'd notice or care. In the way of we'd be against it. It would be more of like, neat. We're having like some really good narrative expression here, because it feels like our characters are being expressed, and then you in the background are I'm turning this into Legend of the Mist.
It would be very hard because they just don't interact mechanically in the same way.
I mean, when I'm thinking about it in the lens of like, we have the tags or whatever. Like, and the tags are basically what kind of character are you playing? For me, it's I am both like my character's in martial arts. He's learning ki. He is an astrophysicist. So like, instead of having like the pure mechanical element of roll science and do all this, it's kind of just adding in, all right, well, your character has this in astrophysics. We can somehow implement this, or just sidestep the idea of like a role for it. Because I don't know, it's like, what lessons narratively has Legend of the Mist taught of how to express a character, and how much can those ideas be expressed in different games?
Yeah, I mean, if anything, maybe it would be more like implementing the specialty system from the Cosmere RPG, because that mechanically slots in better. Because in Legend of the Mist, tags are the mechanics, tags are the numbers, so you can't really have the same thing and divorce the two concepts. So a tag would have to either represent some mathematical or some mechanical like number if we're transferring it to another system, or specialties from Cosmere is more just like, if you have this specialty, you don't need to roll unless what you're doing is particularly difficult.
I think, I mean, also implementing that into Anima would be kind of sick, not gonna lie. Having just, when we show back up into Anima, being like, hey guys, you get like 3 specialties. Have
Yeah,
fun.
I mean, I might just replace the system that I keep forgetting about or not like mentioning, where like every time we finish a section, you guys get a new talent, a new experience, or a new, thing. Changing that to being, the talent or the experience can be those kind of specialty like tags instead.
Yeah, like, I think it's less of, because what I'm really saying is what always it comes down to, based on like the gameplay and because there's always gonna be that system clash, is like what elements can you implement when it comes to like how a GM operates, rather than like, and also how the players operate to some extent. Because I think there's a lesson you can learn as a player of seeing a game express tags like this, and then in your head breaking down what you have into like, let me break my character down into tags of who they are, and then that might dictate the decisions I make in the moment of these kids. Like, I make these decisions because I'm like, oh yeah, my character actually has this, like, these skill sets, like this thing. And it's visualizing it differently, basically, compared to I have a big stat sheet full of numbers. And, like, it'll always, at that point, break down into how do we role play? And how do we, like, play this, like, improv role play space? That is also why we're there.
True.
We're there to do that. Because it's just, that's always the lens I put it on, because I can have my issues with like Pathfinder not having good role play and like narrative weight to like actual narrative stuff, but like I'm never disappointed because our games are always going to have that.
Yeah.
And like I think it is fun to take a game that is very very crunchy and very like all right, we're gonna dungeon delve, and adding some story depth to it. I get some fun out of that, because it's just like, haha, we're playing it the way they didn't intend, and then also I'm telling a good story.
Well, they do intend you to tell a story about it, though. That's the idea.
Not as hard in that way, according to the grognards that show up in comments and are annoying.
Yeah, but every rule book always tells you, like rule 1 or rule 0. Yeah, Call of Cthulhu. Call of Cthulhu is definitely a game we gotta play at some point in time as well.
I want to try it. For that.
For sure. And like, again, I totally get wanting to play numbers, right? I'm a gamer. I'm a gamer, guys. I don't want my video games to just not have any numbers and just be all based on vibe, That's not why I play video games. And I love board games, and a lot of board games are also just play the number, A TTRPG is a very specific type of experience, and I feel like Legend in the Mist, for me, does it the best because it applies all the things I want the best. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to want to have that traditional TTRPG experience and go back to Pathfinder, or just see the fun shit that happens in Anima Beyond Fantasy. It's just like at the moment, it's like when you have a craving for a specific kind of game, right? It's just so hard to get out of your head, because
yeah, I get that a lot.
Yeah, it's just because like, I could play this other game, but I want to play this game,
Yeah,
and
I get that whenever a game's gonna come out. I have like the really bad like fun ADHD thing of I hyperfixate on something to the point where like my brain only produces dopamine or serotonin when I'm directly interfacing with the interest of the week. And then suddenly, sorry, I only want to play this thing that doesn't come out for 2 weeks. I just only want to play this thing though, and I hate it. It sucks. And I fully get what you're saying. It is relatable. But no, like it's the strength in the old. It's a lot of jumbling what my actual thought.
Sure.
It is the overall point I have with Legend of the Mist as a system of when I walk away from it, I don't have actual complaints. Any time, the rare couple times where I'm like, I think I'm forming a critique of this art. I'm like, that's not a real complaint. The complaint is that this isn't a different product. And I'm like, okay, so let me file this away because I don't think this is as valid as criticizing like it is different saying this game actually failed in like doing something it set out to do and intended versus I just want to play Cyberpunk just to throw a game out there. That's not a failing of Legend of the Mist that it's not Cyberpunk like Red.
Right.
It's not a failing on the system, and I don't like that about like that's our big issue with 5e players coming into Pathfinder. Their issue they keep coming across is, well, it's not like 5e. Yeah, because you're not playing 5e. That shouldn't be your immediate complaint. You're failing. That's not a failing on the system. It is you wanting something it's not doing. And so then I walk away from Legend of the Mist being like, damn, this is a fun gameplay style like I just haven't considered before we played this. And it's a great thing to add to our list. Because the one I always talk about, like, man, there is just something really drawing about like the traditional fantasy story. Like the traditional like Western fantasy, we are a group of nobodies, like becoming like best buddies, found family kind of shit.
Yeah.
And we're coming together, becoming better people as we go on. Because I'm a big fan of, if I'm making an adventure, the adventurer is not going to be a great person. Because who in their right mind would become an adventurer in a fantasy world? No one good. Or no one good or stable. That's my point. And then you tell that traditional story. You're fighting dragons. You're looking in dungeons. Is every expedition plot relevant? Not really. But you found a cool dungeon on the way, and it turns out there's a dragon at the end guarding a hoard of gold. So it feels like it's worth it. Like that type of adventure is something very interesting. And I think the vibe of it is really well suited for these types of games. And that's not a type of game I would opt in saying, hey, we should play I don't know, we should play whatever system I can't think of right now to play exactly like this. Because the vibes are always going to be different. And Legend of the Mist has a lot of vibes it can play. It has a lot more versatility in that way. I do like the traditional vibe out of the book it gives you, though.
The rustic fantasy style.
The rustic fantasy is a very cool vibe. I think it's very neat. And it's cool that they give you that, at least something to go out of the box, until you realize, oh, I can just do a lot more shit with this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. For me, the rustic, I don't know, their version of rustic fantasy is very interesting. I do like it. I always tend to lean more hard into like high fantasy just because, you know, do more cool things, more bigger explosions, kind of stuff. Because like I've played the adventure path for Ravensdale, the other book that came out for Legend of the Mist. Like they have a whole adventure path that you can play.
Huh.
And I played it and it was fun. I don't think it's as good of a solo experience as they were really projecting it to be, which was really kind of sad for me. And it's very much in the first section of the game, you were like the town children, you know. The first thing you can do is make apple cider. And that's a whole series of checks you can do to make apple cider and to ensure.
Hell yeah, intense apple cider mechanics.
And then you go back to town and there's a spooky zombie guy and you have to deal with that somehow. A zombie guy who's attacking a little girl. And so you have to save the little girl and stop the zombie guy. And then you find out that like, oh, there's some weird corruption going on. And some wise woman in the village is like, the fortifications for the village are going down. And so you have to go and fix the fortifications. And then there's like fish people there. And you got to fight off the fish people while the wards are put in place. And you learn that like the wards aren't permanent and they're going to break down faster and faster unless we do something. But then like the next part of the game is there's an important character from your village, but he's off on like this pilgrimage, and so you have to chase after him. And you use this as an opportunity to like go through the dales and see all these different places. But it's not, there's like no combat, and there's no nothing. There's not even really any challenges other than like maybe a check when you go and see the individual places this guy is, because there's some secrets at those locations that you can discover lore at. And from what I know, it's supposed to get to a point where by the end of it, you're fighting the like Frost King or something or whatever, who's like this evil fae Jack Frost type guy who wants to destroy the Dales and all this kind of stuff. And you start getting into all the weird fae stuff that happens in the setting, which is really interesting. I also like how they implement their unique magic system called Speared, where you have to discover your Speared, and then your Speared is like a very powerful thing that can do some very interesting things mechanically for what they designed. So it's pretty fun, but it's not the D&D like experience, I would say. It's very much like its own type of fantasy.
Because it's a lot. It's the funny bit of a lot of people point at, like, I want to play my D&D thing because I want to do the same adventures I've seen, like very Tolkien, like The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings. But for a decent chunk, like, I mean, The Hobbit especially, like The Hobbit leans a lot more into like what rustic fantasy is.
Yeah.
But the difference, I'd say, is rustic fantasy can be really interesting. Because like the threats are just going to be different. I think Lord of the Rings starts like that. It just eventually changes into like a lot more what is now traditional fantasy once you get to like the last book and such.
Not even really. Honestly, there's not a lot of crazy stuff going on as far as like character capacity.
I mean, I'm arguably like it's because I'm looking at the stories that you see of following like Aragorn and crew versus like Frodo. It's like that's the line I'm making right there of like when it might shift. And like the big draw of that type of story still is there's active threats, but the threats are just different. It's less of in the moment, there's immediately like a super tied into the plot or maybe even something really high stakes. It's like, no, you're in a fucking spooky bog with corpses in it that like will try to eat your soul. Or a bunch of trolls are arguing about how to eat you first. And
how best to mash up your eyes into jam.
Exactly. And like, how do you get out of this? Oh, well, I start talking to them and I keep distracting them long enough for the sun to come up. Like, that's, I think, a big difference in the style of fantasy. But if you're kind of just ambling about in like rustic scenes, that's not really, I wouldn't call that full like rustic fantasy. You just made a very low stakes like opening to your game. You probably have like a bit of pressing stuff when you're designing your game because the opening, like, I will take the lowest stakes part of your game should be when I'm making applesauce, because the point of you doing that is so then you're looking back on how the times used to be, and like that's what you want to get back. That's the point of those sequences, especially in rustic fantasy, is the disruption of that type of life, and it's then fighting to get it back.
Yeah, and like, I think at the end of the day, it's just about the types of players and the types of games you like to play, because Legend in the Mists is a system designed to mechanically tell a story without having to worry about the numbers so much. Like, you can worry about the numbers a bit, but worrying about the numbers a bit also implies that like your character hasn't, like, if your character is not good enough at swordsmanship yet, right? You don't have enough tags to give it enough power that you want, right? Well, how do you add a new tag, or what's a new tag even represent? It's like, well, your character trains, or like gains a new tag trained with a master, or they learn a specific move, or all kinds of stuff like that. So like, I love it because when you worry about the numbers, you're really worrying about the mechanics and the story as well. And so you're just adding context to your character in order to become better at something, which I think is good and really interesting. But what Legend in the Mist doesn't provide, and I think the thing that causes some people to bounce off, is you are not presented a game in the way that you're used to playing TTRPGs or other games, or RPGs in general. It's not a game in the same way. You can still tell the same stories in both, and I'm not saying that Legend in the Mist is better at telling stories. The only thing I'm saying is that if you like video gamey kind of mechanics, if you like numbers, if you like picking good choices, picking, looking at a choice in a game as kind of a as kind of like a, oh goodness, a goal to reach and finally get to finally get that feat, that finally get that capability for your character, and you find that fun, then yeah, Legend of Mist isn't going to provide that for you. But if you are interested in telling a very mechanically narrative game that doesn't have these predetermined goalposts for you to reach for, or these things you need to level up to get, and instead it's about evolving your character over the story to do more of the things you want to do, then that's the kind of experience you're going to get. Because a Legend in the Mist character, by the same time period, right? You play 20 sessions in Legend in the Mist versus 20 sessions in any other RPG, like without question, Anima, Pathfinder, D&D, whatever. You're going to have more things you're capable of contextually in Legend of the Mist than you are in these other games, because every tag adds context in what you are capable of, and you should be getting a new tag roughly once per session on average.
They I'll say one aspect for Legend in the Mist that it's been on my mind, and to the point where like I got my own little side project I'm gonna be doing for work when I have my downtime, which is started making TikToks.
Yes, I heard.
And God, TikTok is such a fucking view generator sometimes.
Yes.
If you know how to talk to a camera, like, you'll just start gaining shit. But I was like, I want something at least like video production. I can like point people to my YouTube channel while I am at downtime at work. So it's between that and like, there's a Legend of the Mist solo game I'm like been kind of interested in doing, because I think of anything, this system can do this type of story uniquely well. I want to make just like a guy who then shows up to a location and gets embroiled in bullshit. I want to have like the lowest level start. I want him to be like, he's literally a farmer. He's freshly like 18 or 19, and he's like, maybe his pa gave him a spear, his old spear he had because he served in the military for a bit. And he shows up to a like bigger town because his parents got enough money, they worked hard, and like, we're gonna send you off to the big city because we think you can make a living out there, and of course come back whenever you can. He's like, yeah, of course. And then bullshit happens because it's rolling on the all the different tables of like, all right, what story does he get thrust into? Does he have a secret power or like a secret lineage, or like, does he have anything special to him? All of that is outside of my control. It is purely the story of just, at the beginning, a guy who, when I'm thinking about his combat, he has a single tag based on his background that's his dad trained him lightly in how to use a spear. But in reality, he's like more of a farmer. So he's like, he knows how to use a pitchfork, so he uses a spear kind of like a pitchfork. He doesn't know how to twirl it or spin it or hit. He knows how to stab.
Yeah. I mean, the fun thing in this game is applying tags that are not like directly related to it, but are so helpful. Like, being a farmhand could give you like strength of an ox, right? You lift shit all day and all that kind of stuff. And that's also good in combat, funny enough. So, tags like that are really good at doing other things, but also could technically be used for, it's like how a knife is technically just a tool, but we use it for killing people. Same idea.
Yeah. Oh, man. I know there's a game coming out that's also like this. That's going to be done for this, and I hope it's good. But like, you could tell such a good Terry Pratchett Discworld story in Legend of the Mist.
Yes.
Like, you really could.
All the random context you could add to certain scenes. I'd love someone being an insurance agent going through a fantasy world.
Yeah, like, because I'm talking about this character concept, I'm like, this is just fucking guards. This is guards, but I'm not playing a moron. Like, that's all it is. Which, if anyone out there, if you haven't read Discworld, you should at least read Guards or Mort. Pick the Death storyline or the Ankh-Morpork City Watch storyline. Pick one of those two. They're fantastic. There's the other one it's Going Postal. That's it. That one's a good one. I like the TV movie. Also because the TV movie has such insane casting for the fucking, he's not a king. What is he called of Ankh-Morpork?
I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've looked into anything Discworld.
That's something. If you need more audiobooks, you should the Patrician. That's it. Or he's a dictator for life, but he doesn't want to call himself that because that's bad branding.
Right.
But let me find it. It's the Patrician. He's played by the guy who plays the main Lannister father in Game of Thrones.
Oh.
Lord Vetinari. He is played by Charles Dance. That's it. Charles Dance is such sick casting for the Patrician because the part that makes him so funny of a character is that he is a very serious guy who's also genuinely like threatening in the goofiest fantasy world you've ever read. And the comedy is him dealing with the characters that are in this story and having a lot of leverage and a lot of interesting stuff going on. What a good book series. What a good set of world building too. I love the world building of Discworld. It's such a good story of how you can tell an absurdist story while having everything like not feel pointless.
Yeah. Yeah. But all right, that's gonna be it for us today. We didn't we didn't talk about stats nearly enough.
I would argue we were genuinely, because the concept of stats is what we were talking about throughout all of this.
I mean, yeah, I would say tangentially. I would like to discuss the idea of in non-Legend of the Mist games, what stats, are necessary versus not, because I still think attributes are more of a limiting factor than they are anything beneficial stat-wise. Like, and to be fair, I think World of Darkness and White Wolf in general did it pretty well, all things considered, because of how many points really. It's about like quantity of points and what you can do and all that kind of stuff. But like I find attributes to be something more limiting because attributes are not reflective of experiences like skills are. They can represent innate inclinations, but then I would just prefer those to be like a different type of thing.
Yeah, like they can represent your character, and like a lot of times it's representing your character's like body more than anything.
Yeah.
And like then you can train it, you can hone it, but for a lot of that honing, skills expresses the idea of progressing it a lot more than, hey, I got a +2 to my strength. I guess you've been lifting weights a lot in this time, but it's like it's that kind of gamey thing of, whoa, I fell asleep and I suddenly am 2 points stronger. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, what's the context of that?
And you kind of just have to stretch it of like, I mean, I guess it's been, if you've been adventuring and fighting monsters for like 5 months as it's taken for this big level up. I guess that does build up a lot of muscle, but you have to recontextualize it from the past level up instead of overnight I popped in and I just suddenly got stronger.
Yeah, and it's like now you're just noticing how much stronger you are.
Yeah, it's like, it's very gamey. It's the gamey thing that you look at and you're like, I'm gonna have to find a way to narratively justify this, or we just kind of hand wave it.
I'm gonna jab Legend of the Mist. You don't have to worry about it. It's just context.
Like we can have our next topic be more on this, but then we ban Legend of the Mist talk at all.
I'm gonna reiterate, I did not start the Legend of the Mist part of this conversation.
I brought it up expressly because I think when we're talking about the idea of our attributes good and like our stats necessary, it is then necessary to talk about an example of when it is not necessary and how it is implemented. I think it is important to talk and put out. However, if we then carried on, say next week, and then banned all discussion of Legend of the Mist, I think we've covered all the ground we have here. That's
fair, I suppose. I wanted to say it for the audience so they know that despite me being the fanboy, I didn't bring it up. I promise. I was here to have a genuine conversation about the number games instead. But
we got it all. Got it all out.
Yeah. No, it's not. The Legend of the Mist is just such a problem for me. But all right, Alex. So, anything you want to leave us off with today before we head out?
Yeah, I got my own videos. I'm finally back in making videos. I have a recorded thing I did yesterday. I'm gonna work on it. We got some vampire content in the works, and then in the meantime, if you go to my YouTube channel, it's Glue Boy. You can also now, I guess, go to TikTok and look up Glue Boy. I'll be making videos when I can. Largely, it's been funny. I've been making some of these from memory, then I watch it back after like editing some parts of it, and I'm like, damn, I'll fact check myself and be like, I'm really glad I'm not flubbing this. It means I've absorbed it properly.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want short form stuff, or if you want to like, I don't know, the reason I'm doing TikTok is because I think that TikTok has good tools of just video responding and commenting and shit better than shorts. So I think it's a good way to do that. So if you have WoD lore questions, you can go to my TikTok.
As for me, I'm going to just be here thinking about Legend in the Mist and being a dad. Though I will say that soon, we're getting there. My mother will be moving up to live nearby, and so I'll have someone to watch my daughter more often. And I do intend on, when things kind of settle down to the point where I feel comfortable doing it regularly, getting back into making videos. I really want to make videos. I'm sorry. They're probably going to be about Legend of the Mist to begin with. Oh, I really need to get this game out of my system. It's causing problems. But I do plan on making videos and getting back into it. And I'll probably start making shorts too. I really need to start thinking about shorts and stuff like that, because my channel needs like a miracle to come back from the grave at the moment. That's what happens when you don't make content for like over a year. Being a dad's hard.
It's the chug back up. Like, the only bit is there's so much. I had a viewer be like, you should cross post it to shorts, and then like the thing is like there's a lot more stuff that has come up about shorts and how it impacts your YouTube channel, and like it can be negative for your channel, because the big one is your shorts audience is going to be different than your actual like long form audience, and because of that, like, because people who are subscribed to you are not interacting with your long form content, it can fuck you like worse. Yeah. Which is the thing that's holding me back from wanting to cross post, because like I'm already as much of like, I don't care as much about the algo boosting all like everything. But I'm also like, I don't want to like shoot my channel in the foot. Just go to TikTok for that. It's better.
Sometimes you just gotta play the game, and like on YouTube, shorts are beneficial because, one, people don't have to search up your shorts. In fact, it's very hard to search for shorts unless you're looking at someone's channel specifically.
And TikToks. It's really hard to find a TikTok you saw earlier.
And it can just alert people to your channel if they're looking generally in the area of the content you make, which is usually why like Legends of Evantress and a lot of other channels have done really, really well. I don't think you have to worry about different types of audiences unless there's a different value in the short versus the long-term content for like what it is trying to like tell your audience.
Which that is the thing. Like my short form content is going to be different than my long form content, because I don't like because I've watched my own stuff, edited my own stuff, and I'm like, I don't think there's a way I can cut it down. Because funnily, in the point of Evantress, I am a Evantress short form only viewer. And so that is the level it puts me in, and that's because I just don't like actual plays. And like it's the best. It's really fun. It's real fun, but I have other things I'd rather listen to. But yeah, that's more of it. Like it's for YouTube specifically. Because TikTok, the point of doing it on TikTok is that you're then directing people to go find your channel and like link to it, which also gets you some nice algorithm cookies, because it's just like, oh, people are searching your shit. I guess it's big news. But like, it's just doing it on shorts is the part of the game where I'm like, I don't know how beneficial it would be for my content type. But that is, I don't know. I'm not Jimmy Beast. I don't think that much about YouTube algorithms. Yeah. I just kind of make stuff.
But all right, that's gonna be it for us. I guess we'll go ahead and say good day.
Good day.
Bye.